The next thing that we're going to talk about is extinction. As far as extinction, we have some general terms that we need to look at first. Now, we have the term fossil. We've always known essentially what a fossil is. So how would we define a fossil? Is it a dead organism? Is it a rock? What would we say a fossil is? A fossil essentially is a dead organism that has been imprinted in stone. So it's an imprint in stone of a dead organism. The fossil record is the cumulative body of fossil worldwide, all the fossils worldwide. Here, if we use something called phylogenetic trees and the fossil record, it's going to show us many different things. What it has shown us is that life existed on Earth for about 3.5 billion years. Life existed on Earth for 3.5 billion years. Life evolved complex structures from simple ones. That's another thing. So we've seen that life evolved, struggling here, life evolved complex structures from simple ones. Life evolved large sizes from small ones. And then the last thing says natural selection can also favor simplicity and small size. So it doesn't always have to be that we're going to always go from small to big or from simple to large. Sometimes more simplistic things or smaller size is going to be beneficial. Here we see a nice example of a fossil. So we see an imprint of a dead organism. And this is a famous fossil. This is called Archaeopteryx. This was first found in 1863 and several have been found. And what we see here when we look at this is that this organism had feathers, it had teeth, it had a long bony tail. So we think that it was related or a mixture kind of a reptile and a bird. So it's probably not the ancestor of modern birds, but rather a close relative. So we can see that, the teeth of this organism, we don't have, or birds don't have teeth. They don't have a long bony tail. Those are things more common in reptiles or reptilians. Here on this image, we see a trilobite. We also see another example of a fossil. But let's talk a little bit about extinction. It says most species most species that have once lived are now gone. And biological extinction is a natural process. It's a natural process in which an entire species ceases to exist. So it's disappearance of species from Earth. So species last about 1 to 10 million years. Not very long, 1 to 10 million years. The next thing is we could also have a local extinction. A local extinction occurs when a population of a species becomes extinct over a large region, but not globally. So this occurs when a population of a species becomes see what happened here. I don't know what just happened. Okay, let's go back, see if that works. Okay, here we go. Occurs when a population, occurs when a population of species becomes extinct. Becomes extinct over a large region, but not globally. So biological diversity is now being lost at an astounding rate. This loss of species is irreversible. Once they're gone, they're gone. So here we see the number of species is basically extinction subtracted from something called speciation. All right, what species are more vulnerable to extinction? So here, extinction occurs when the environment changes rapidly. Natural selection can't keep up, so species can't adapt. There's many different factors that cause extinction. It could be anything from climate change to changing sea levels or severe weather, the arrival of new species, small populations, specialized species. It could be anything. So there's many different factors that cause extinction. Now what do we see on this image on the right? We see a lemur. A lemur is endemic to Madagascar, meaning it exists only in a certain specialized area. So endemic species are species that exist only in a certain specialized area. So these are very, very susceptible to extinction. They usually have very small populations. So an aye-aye, also endemic to Madagascar, or a giant panda, endemic to China, or a koala. Those are examples of endemic species, not found on many continents. A rat would not be considered endemic because we find it all over. All right, so here's some more examples of some different endemic species. So we see a koala, we see an aye-aye, we see some a panda, we see some examples here of different endemic species. Here we see some more as well, different endemic species found only in certain areas. All right, so Earth has had several mass extinctions. So let's talk about that, mass extinctions. The background extinction rate, let's define first. Background extinction rate is extinctions usually occur slowly, one species at a time. That's background extinction rate. That's what we're used to. Occur slowly, and it's usually one species at a time. So what's mass extinction? This is when species are killed off in massive numbers. So killed off, mass extinction events killed off massive killed off massive numbers of species at once. This has occurred 5 times in our history, 5 times in the last 500 million years. So generally, mass extinctions have been followed by an increase in species diversity as new species have arisen and occupy new habitats or exploit newly available resources. But mass extinction is generally signified by losing 50 to 95% of all species at one time. We're going to talk about 2 that are important, 2 mass extinctions out of the 5. One is the end Cretaceous or the Cretaceous tertiary event. This happened 65 million years ago. So this one is the closest one in our history. And this was when we believe that a gigantic asteroid basically caused the extinction of dinosaurs. So here, what happened? How did we even come up with this theory? We found something called iridium. Iridium is, let me write that out again. Iridium is a metal that we only find in asteroids. And what happened is we found 65 million years ago in the fossil record, we found a layer of this rock, this metal that we never find on Earth. It's very, very, very rare to find on Earth, but we found large quantities of it throughout the fossil record. So that's what helped us deduce that, okay, there was probably an asteroid and this might have caused this large extinction event. The second one was 250 million years ago. And this one we chose is important because it is the largest extinction in our history. So it was 250 million years ago, and 75 to 95% of species went extinct. So this was our largest extinction to date. And we have no idea. We have no clue why it happened. Here, I wanted to just show you this image because what this image does show you is that here we have the end Permian event about 250 million years ago. You can see the 5 in total. The end Cretaceous is the one we talked about that happened about 65 million years ago. And we can see some of the other larger extinction, mass extinctions in our history. Here, this is a little nice of an image to kind of tie some of these things together. You don't need to know any of these periods, but here at the top, it shows you that the Earth is approximately 4.6 million years, or 4.6 billion years actually old. Here we have 4.6, well, let me erase that. So the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, and it's just here in million years old that we're seeing up at the top. But what you can see is, well, what was the Earth looking like, or what did it look like in some of these periods? Because we were talking about 250 million years ago, and here you can see 250 million years ago, this is what the Earth looked like, compared to when we had the Jurassic or the end Cretaceous event happen. And here, that was 65 million years ago, looked much different compared to what it did 250 million years ago. So this is kind of a nice image to get you to visualize what was going on. We think that the 6th mass extinction is upon us, And we believe that humans could be the cause for this sixth mass extinction event. One of the things that we think that the reasons why we think this is occurring is because of amphibians. They're disappearing faster than any other group. We believe that this is occurring because of a couple of different things. One, amphibians live in both water and on land. Amphibians also have permeable skin, meaning things can pass through the skin, so they easily absorb pollutants and they're susceptible to changes. And we have already 170 species that have already vanished and that are no longer here. Here is a classic example of an amphibian. This is an amphibian that it's called the Monteverde tree frog that we only found in a certain region on top of a mountain range. And what's interesting about this particular species, and here you can see Monteverde located in Costa Rica. What's interesting is that we didn't discover this species till quite recently. I believe it was right around 1987. We had no idea it even existed. And then what happened was within a few years after we even found that it was even a species that existed, was it became extinct. They were all gone. And it only lived on top of this one mountain range in Monteverde. And when the climate changed and shifted, they all disappeared. And we no longer find the species anymore. I'm going to skip through that video. You guys can look through that video on your own. Okay. The next thing that we have here is conservation biology. And let's finish up this topic here. Conservation biology studies the factors behind the loss, protection, and restoration. Of biodiversity. So this is an applied and goal-oriented science. There's specific or implicit values and there's ethical standards that tie into conservation biology. But if I'm a conservation biologist, I'm trying to figure out ways that I could prevent the loss of certain species, prevent their extinction, restore biodiversity, and protect them. So that's why if I'm a conservation biologist, I integrate extinction, I integrate ecology, evolution, environmental systems. I encompass a lot of different things. So we also have this term called conservation geneticists, and they study the effects of the loss of genetic variation. They study the effects of loss of genetic variation. The minimum viable population size is how small a population can become. So what's the smallest size? How small a population can become before it runs into problems such as extinction, before it runs into problems such as extinction. So scientists are studying species dispersal and gene flow. How do genes move from different locations? How do species disperse to determine how likely a population will persist or not? So conservation obviously focuses on endangered species. The Endangered Species Act of 1973 is the primary legislation for protecting biodiversity in the U.S. It forbids the government and citizens from taking any actions that might destroy endangered species or their habitats, or even trading in products made from endangered species. The Endangered Species Act promotes the prevention of extinction by enabling populations to recover and by stabilizing declining populations. So in 2010, recovery plans were in place for 90% of the 1,000, a little over 1,000 endangered and 314 threatened species in the U.S. All right, so that's it for this particular topic. And the last thing that we'll talk about here is going to be on extinction of, or I'm sorry, not extinction, but about species in general.